So, welcome to the Clive Barker podcast. You can find us at www.clivebarkercast.com. And with me is Roger Boyes and Jose Leitao.
Hello.
I am.
So, I guess to get started, Roger, what was your first introduction to Clive Barker? What was the first memory that you have of his work?
Oh, that was way back. Probably like Nightbreed or Hellraiser, the first things I ever saw. And then later I saw Hellbound. And that really got me, that got me into it. I was like, wow, I think it was the unrated version I saw, and I was like, oh man, this is like something just for adults. How did I get to see this? It just, that scene with the guy in an insane asylum cutting himself up, that just totally messed me up for the rest of my life.
And what about you, Jose?
Oh yeah, well, I think that my first exposure to Clive Barker's work was probably flipping the channel one day and seeing like Frank all bloodied up wearing a white suit saying to Christy, hey, it's me, it's Uncle Frank, come to Daddy. And I was like, whoa, what is this? So I wasn't old enough to be able to watch Hellraiser at the time. But I guess my brother got the VHS tape from the video store, and he was watching the movie, and I was kind of like sneaking from the doorway watching the movie too. And, that was a fun thing, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
And I got hooked. I got hooked, and then I saw it on the big screen because we had a fantastic film festival in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tradition that in every festival, there was always at least one session of Hellraiser going on. So I saw Hellraiser in the big screen, and then I saw Hellbound as a double feature as well.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, it turns out that every year around February, I would go to the film festival and watch Hellraiser and Hellbound. And eventually, Doug Bradley started showing up as a guest to that film festival as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And, I actually got to meet him like 3 or 4 times.
So do they show them? In Portugal? Do they show them with subtitles, or is it dubbed?
Yeah, we have subtitles. I think that, for example, in other countries like Spain, Brazil, Germany, and Italy, they actually dub all the characters' voices. But here we just have them with subtitles. And then the first book I read from Clive Barker was Cabal, which I read Cabal when I was spending a summer in Canada. And that was pretty funny. Like, I was telling you earlier before we began the podcast, I was like reading that in Canada, in Montreal, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like Miriam's in Canada, and I'm in Canada. And I was like, I was like 17 at the time, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I think this was back in 93. And, that was my first book. And then as soon as I came back to Portugal, I started looking for other books by Clive Barker. And there was a store called the British Store, which pretty much imported books from England. And I got to buy The Great and Secret Show. And from then on, I was hooked. Weaveworld, Books of Blood, all the books that I got from there. And then, of course, I started using eBay and Amazon.
Yeah, once the internet came around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was much better, much cheaper to buy a book on the internet than importing it through a third party.
So for both of you, kind of the gateway was Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Yep. And I actually found the first book I read of Clive's was The Hellbound Heart, which I found at a flea market. Little paperback with the, I think it's Frank on the front. He's all, no skin or anything. And I looked through that and I was like, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that paperback. Yeah, I remember that. That was, you couldn't get a hardcover of that book for a long time, at least in the U.S.
Oh, really? My paperback from The Hellbound Heart has like this painting of Pinhead, and then underneath Pinhead is like Frank and Julia like naked embracing them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I actually have a copy of the art because I found that art being sold at an auction site, and I snatched the image. Pretty big
really?
Image. I'll send it to you guys later. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could email it to me, then I'll put it up on the notes on the website.
Will do.
Cool. Yeah, for me, I guess I wasn't really allowed to watch horror movies, and I was over at a friend's house, and he had rented Nightbreed, and it had just come out, and so I watched that, and Clive Barker's introduction where he's talking about how much he loves monsters, and that sort of just sucked me in and got me to and then of course the score was awesome, and I just really got sucked into that movie. I loved it, and I wanted to know more about Clive Barker. I wanted to read the book, and then you hear all you really hear is Clive Barker and the Books of Blood, and you think, oh, this is going to be really scary, and so I got the Books of Blood and started reading through those, and then at some point I think I started going to a bookstore where they would print out a dot matrix printout for me of every Clive Barker book there was, and I remember one of them said for $17 the Hellbound hard, and I was like, oh, that's got finally the hardcover, that's got to be the hardcover, so I bought it, and it was an audiobook on cassettes, but it was read by Clive Barker, which was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. What do you think of the way he makes the Cenobite voices? He made them sound really like disembodied and like hollow.
Yeah, kind of like ghostly.
Yeah.
I since have taken those cassettes and recorded them into iTunes so that and changed them into an audiobook there because I don't have any way to play cassettes anymore.
Mm-hmm. I have an audiobook on cassette of that story, the short story from the Books of Blood, The Body Politic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got that through eBay, and it's actually pretty cool. I need to digitize that tape. That'd be really cool because it's one of my favorite stories, and the box, the tape box, is just amazing. But anyway, that's the only book on tape that I have from Clive.
Does he read that one, or is that somebody else?
No, that is someone else. I think he used to work for Hamlin Books. I think it's a Hamlin audio book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's some guy with a really, some old guy with a really cool voice reading the story. It really
That's
adds
cool.
to the story. His performance is pretty good.
Oh, and what you said before about flying over Canada, or actually being in Canada, I live in Alaska, and I've driven between Seattle and Alaska a few times. Like we were talking about earlier. So I remember one of the times I was looking at my map, and I saw Peace River and Dwyer on there, and I was like, oh my God, those are the directions to Midian. So I almost convinced, my brother was with me, I almost convinced him to go off the map, or off of our path and to go check that out, but probably would have just gotten lost and not found anything interesting anyway.
I'm actually curious to know the directions of, was it like south of Sheer Neck, north of Dwyer? I never really bothered to
east of Peace River, north of Athabasca, north of Dwyer, and then it's near the town of Sheer Neck, I think.
I never really bothered to go to like Google Maps and try to map the area that those directions indicate. I'm guessing it's probably a pretty big area.
Yeah, well, and I think Clive Barker only probably generally kind of saw some, for his research, probably, saw some stuff on a map, and that's probably as far as it went. I can't imagine he's actually visited those places.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
Well, there is one short story in the Books of Blood. It's called How Spoilers Bleed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about Portugal in that story. Like, one of the hunters or whatever, was in Portugal. And he made Portugal look a lot like Brazil, to be honest.
Oh.
he has some small kids speaking in Portuguese, like knocking on the guy's door.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if you read that on the Books of Blood, that's pretty much not Portuguese at all. It's kind of like a lot of misspellings on those words, I'll tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess for probably 90% of us, we don't know the difference.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty interesting about Nightbreed. It's one of those movies that should have had more coverage and definitely more attention, I guess.
Yeah, and they sort of dangled a carrot in front of us, and then nothing came of it with the extended edition.
Yeah, let's see if Revelations can probably make like a book with a DVD companion or something like that.
Now that would be, something would be good. I remember I was at a book signing in '95 for Sacrament, I think, and and I stayed at the end so that I could ask Clive Barker, hey, is there going to be a director's cut of Nightbreed, Laserdisc? And he's like, oh yeah, and it's going to be 25 minutes longer. So, that was 1995. What is that? 20 years ago? Almost?
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like, I'm sure that's really frustrating for him, too. I mean, the fans really want it, and they're always, something that they're always asking about it. And, if they're not asking about Scarlet Gospels, they're asking about when's the director's cut of Nightbreed going to come out?
I guess. Wasn't Mark Miller involved in trying to...
Yeah.
talk to the executives or have access to the archives or something from Morgan?
I've talked to him a few times, but I didn't really ask him about this. But my thinking from what I remember was that when Clive said all we need is somebody to just go search the archives at Fox, he was the guy that kind of stepped up and volunteered to do that. And I thought that was how he got involved with Clive Barker, but I don't really know that for sure.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't know what became of, what he found or...
I have probably that somewhere here from my notes, but I think that Revelations did mention something. I think they list like a Mark Miller quote that said he talked to like the executives or something, and they said they definitely had that, but then they said, it turns out that they don't have the celluloid, the actual celluloid. So the only things that remain are those videotapes.
Yeah, VHS.
Or whatever that Sarah and Phil found.
Yeah.
Because I guess that at some point, the studios sometimes they keep the celluloid archived, but at some point sometimes it gets tagged for destruction. I don't know. And I think that what the guys from Morgan Creek said was that the celluloid had been destroyed.
Yes, that's awful. I mean, why couldn't they just say, hey, let's call up Clive Barker and see if he wants to keep it?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that Clive Barker has a bunch of tapes with the dailies.
Yeah.
Probably that's where Revelations found those tapes. I don't know.
Yeah.
We could probably look into inviting or interviewing Revelations future episode. That would be cool.
Yeah, definitely. I could probably also talk to Mark Miller at some point too.
Oh, that would be great.
So in news, Abarat 3, they just announced an audiobook for that. I think for me, part of the magic of the Abarat books is the paintings. So I drive a lot, so I could see the appeal of an audiobook, and it would just be another way to read it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. I think that Abarat is amazing in the scope of the general scope of the paintings that it has. It's like there's every other page, almost practically every other page has some painting, and it's just amazing. It's something that really took Clive a long time to do.
Yeah. I actually got to stand in front of the actual full-sized painting of the Abarat.
Oh wow, the islands.
Yeah. It's on 3 huge canvases all put together.
Oh my God!
In his studio.
So
Yeah, that's an amazing painting.
Yeah. And I also got to see the original of Christopher Carrion. When I was going kind of doing the tour of the studio. That one was just kind of sitting out, and I just kind of stopped. And I'm like, whoa. He goes, I know, isn't that amazing? It's kind of overwhelming, isn't it? I said, yeah. And then just this whole room filled with these cataloged canvases, and they all had little color-coded stickers that say, and the colors mean, like, what book that they go to.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I was wearing the shirt with the Dragon Man on it, at the time, and I said, hey, do you have this painting? I think it would be cool to take a picture of me, standing there next to that painting. He's like, here, let me see. And he went through and found it and pulled it out. And so that's the picture that I put on the front of the website there on that coming soon post that I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know that we have people at the forum, at Roger's forum, which, by the way, I'm going to let Roger plug it after I finish this.
Yeah.
I know that we have at least one person there who has a Clive Barker original.
Maureen, I think, right?
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. That's like the carver and her husband's. And it's just a painting. Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Personally, I don't own any art from Clive Barker except from autographed books, and sometimes he made like a little doodle there.
Yeah.
But
I've got a lot. I've taken autographed and posters where he's drawn on them and framed them and put them up. But those are just the cost of framing. I've never bought any original. I mean, that just the cost of that is unbelievable. I don't know if she paid for that or got it as a gift from him. She's known Clive for a long time.
Yeah, I guess. I do have Hellraiser art. I mean, comic book art. That's kind of my thing. It's collecting.
Oh, that's cool.
Original comic art. So
from the Epic series.
Yeah, from the Hellraiser Epic series. I got some from the Nightbreed comics.
Cool.
I got some from the Eclipse graphic novels. And, I have a beautiful page from Dread, the adaptation for Dread.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So, that's kind of my thing. I guess I've been lucky because eBay can be a real treasure trove.
Yeah, definitely.
If you just know how to look. And
I've got a lot of saved searches on there just waiting for stuff to pop up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, eBay is a fan's best friend, I guess.
Yeah. So, we were just talking about the Rogers forum, his Clive Barker forum.
Oh, yeah, it was just, we got the Fifth Dominion. It's pretty much for fans to gather and, share ideas, communicate. The heart of the thing is the forums. We got some great people on there, real friendly. And everybody's no spamming or nothing, so you don't have to worry about that.
We don't bite.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cool thing is it's the only, and it's also the only Clive Barker forum there is. And Roger has the original Clive Barker page group on Facebook from what I know. They just started another one, but Rogers was there first. But that was the website, the address for that was www.timewinds.com/Clive, right?
Right, and we'll get a link up somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it in the notes here too. But yeah, that's where we'll be discussing the podcast.
Oh yeah, cool. We will definitely have a thread up for that. And I used to have a blog, which now has pretty much come to a standstill, which was Hellraiser Gallery. It was hellraisergallery.blogspot.com. But daily life just kind of like grinds to a still. But I haven't given up hope one day of like putting up a website and mainly just posting stuff from my collection there and sharing it for fans. That would be nice. I guess that's an idea that's been in my mind for a while. But, I mean, you guys have done such a great work. I mean, Rogers Forum, Revelations. I mean, it's just, I think they pretty much have it covered for Clive Barker fans.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're not here to tell people the news. The first we're gonna we're discussing what we think of the stuff and our opinions. But yeah, Revelations is awesome. That's the best place to get Clive Barker news.
Definitely.
Yeah, I remember the original CliveBarker.com.
Yeah, Lost Souls it was called, right?
Yeah, Lost Souls.
So I was on there for a long, long time, and, I was always checking it every day, and then, suddenly just stuff stopped happening there. And I was like, what's going on? And I just kept checking it, and nothing, and nothing, and nothing. And then it's like, somehow I found out about CliveBarker.info that this other one's been going on for a while, and I didn't even know. And it's like, oh, now that one's I thought the other one was the official Clive Barker site, but I guess Phil and Sarah's is.
Yeah, Phil and Sarah just took over. They did such a great job with it. I guess Clive, said, hey, you guys can do the official one now.
Oh. So the Lost Souls people just kind of lost it.
Yeah, I guess so. If I recall, like, the webmaster of that website was some guy called Barnabas. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was in the Lost Souls fan club, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you guys ever...
Yeah, with the newsletters and stuff?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, there was the Dread newsletter, too, right?
Right.
I have a couple of those.
Oh, cool.
One of them has a Clive Barker, a little short story about quiddity called On Eamon's Shore.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I have some Dread newsletters, but not all of them. So... I've never read that one. That's one of the reasons why I would like to see Blackest Devil's Rainbow get published.
Yeah, definitely. And the next thing was Boom Studios. I guess this week Hellraiser number 9 came out. I haven't bought it yet, so I don't know. My understanding was that the first 8 were kind of their own story, and they were the purpose of those, and Chris Monfett and Clive Barker co-wrote those together to set up an ongoing series that would be more about Tiffany as the main character versus the Cenobites of Kirsty and her harrower friends.
Oh yeah! Wow, that's. I have the first, second, and 8th comic from the Boom Studios. I confess, I kind of slacked off a little bit there.
It's hard to keep up with that stuff. I mean, before you know it, 3 issues have gone by, and they're hard to find. Yeah,
and of course, there's always cover A, cover B, cover C.
Yes.
Cover.
Yeah.
I won't get into a rant here, but it's
Yeah, I know. When you're an obsessive collecting fan, that is really, that kind of makes your head spin a little bit.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to the new series. I kind of wonder, as Clive Barker gets less involved, the series, it's starting out really strong and it's really good. But I'm wondering as he, becomes less involved, and I think Chris Monfett is not going to be writing the new issues from what I remember. I could be wrong. It's going to, I don't. We'll see how they come out. I'll buy them and see, what I think. But
yeah, I've looked at a few previews and stuff of it, but the artwork is amazing from what I've seen.
Yeah. I think the new issue is called Heaven's Reply.
The last issue I read was the 8th issue.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not going to mention any spoilers, but it's one where Kirsty, is a very important character in that story. And gosh, I mean, the cover that, let me see which cover this is. Okay, I got cover A and cover B right here. And I think it's cover A, which has Pinhead, with his face over his head.
Yeah.
That is just an amazing cover right there. I mean, that is... wow, I want this blown up and framed on my wall.
Yeah, it's really good artwork, and it's really cool that they brought back the original Cenobites instead of using Cenobites from any of the other Hellraiser movies or a lot of the old Epic comics. Most of them didn't even have Pinhead; they just invented their own Cenobites, which was cool for those. But I think with Clive Barker being involved and Pinhead being the main character, that they have these others. And even the female Cenobite, does some interesting stuff in this Hellraiser number 8.
It's interesting that they. I was reading number 8, and I saw, the Harrowers are in this. Comics. And I was like, wow, because I remember when the Harrowers showed up on. I think it was an Alex Ross story.
In the Epic series. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think Clive wrote those 2 stories, I think. And the Harrowers really seemed like a neat concept at the time. I mean, they even had their own short-lived comic book series.
Yep, and I remember an interview with Clive, and somebody was saying, and Clive was saying, all these Hellraiser comics, it's like somebody opens the box and they get dragged to hell. Why doesn't anybody ever fight back? And so he created this idea of the Harrowers.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. And there was also the deity, or I don't know.
Yeah, Morte Mame, I think is her name.
Morte Mame, yeah. Which I always wanted to know more about. I mean, like an antagonist to Leviathan.
Yeah.
I guess now we're going to have several kinds of, mythologies going on, because there's going to be, the Hellraiser movie mythology.
Yeah.
Basically has very little to do with, Clive Barker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first 2, I don't know if he came up with Leviathan and, the way that Hell was in Hellraiser 2, or if that was all, Peter Atkins.
I think that originally their idea for that, they were brainstorming, and it was supposed to be a much different thing. Like, Leviathan was supposed to be this pulsating glob of flesh that was like the embodiment of evil or something. And then they turned it into a big diamond thing.
Yeah. With the black light coming out of it.
Yeah, which is pretty iconic.
It is. I mean, literally.
I mean, gosh, that glass painting with the labyrinth and the maze,
Yeah.
I always wanted to see more of that on the movies. I was like, I can't believe that they never went back to that in the movies. I guess they tried to make it seem like we were looking at the labyrinth in Deader. I mean,
I'm trying. Yeah, I've watched every sequel, just so that I could say that I've seen them, but they sort of blur together a little bit for me.
Oh yeah.
And I just recently bought them all because, doing this podcast, I figured I should give them another chance. And we'll probably be talking about them at some point in the future.
Well, don't buy Revelations.
I rented it.
Okay.
But we'll get to that. That's going to be part of our main topic. So then the next thing we've got, in Montreal, Canada, they're doing a production of History of the Devil. Title 66 Productions. So, of course, I mean, I'm not anywhere near Montreal, but I think it would be neat to see somebody doing History of the Devil somewhere. That's a really cool play, and it wouldn't require a whole lot of money to put it together. Just good actors.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree. I mean, have you guys ever heard the Seeing Ear Theater adaptation of History of the Devil?
No. I wonder...
That was really good.
Where do you find that?
I can send it to you after this conversation.
Okay.
It's a really neat audiobook adaptation. It's not really an audiobook. It's more like audio production.
Oh. So is it still? I mean, can you still buy it on like CD or on iTunes or something?
I don't think so. I mean, we can look it up after the conversation, but I think it's pretty much out of print.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Okay.
It was from the Seeing Ear Theater, and it was pretty cool. That's actually the first time I actually got exposed to that particular play. And later I bought the book. I think it was either Incarnations or Forms of Heaven.
Yeah. I can't remember which one has which plays either.
Yeah, me neither. So I think that's when I actually read the script, which was even better because I had listened to the audio production and I had these visual images in my head, and that really helped to give life to what I was reading. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool. I really recommend it.
Well, I'll have to hear that.
It is in Incarnations.
Yeah. Oh, it's Incarnations?
Yeah, it's the last one in there.
Okay, and which one has like Colossus and Frankenstein in Love would be Forms of Heaven?
Those two are both, yep.
Okay.
No, they're both. Those two are both in Incarnations too.
Oh, and then yeah, I think that. Yeah.
Colossus, Frankenstein in Love, History of the Devil.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and our main topic for today is since this is our first episode, and we're just starting the new year, so we thought it would be a good idea to do a review of 2011 and all the stuff that's happened that's Clive Barker related. So number one, we had been told there was going to be a Hellraiser remake, or that they were working on that, and what we eventually got we'll talk about. But what are your guys' thoughts on a Hellraiser remake?
I think. All right. You want to go first, Roger?
I'd rather not tackle this one. I mean, it can be a good thing. I mean, it's like with any remake.
Yeah.
New direction or something. If Clive was directly involved, that would be,
And that almost happened. It seemed like for a while they wanted him to be involved, and then it just took on a life of its own, and then it spun into this what we have now.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, the sequence of events was more or less like Clive got approached by, was it Harvey or Bob Weinstein? I don't know. It's one of those two brothers. And he actually wrote a treatment for it, like for the new Hellraiser remake. And they actually promised him or told him that he would actually be involved as a producer. But then, of course, Hollywood, did its thing, and they were like, "Oh, you know what? We'll try to get someone to give this a little edge or something." And they started disregarding Clive's treatment. They started shopping around for a writer, shopping around for a director, and from my last count, I mean, they must have gone through 4 directors and God knows how many writers. At one point, the guys from some French guys, Patrick Lussier, I think, they did a movie called Inside, I think, which is this horror movie about this pregnant woman.
Oh, okay.
Like a woman who wants to get her baby.
Oh, I was thinking of somebody else. Yeah.
I think so. And they were involved in it, and then that didn't go through, and then there was another team that was supposed to adapt it, and that fell through as well. And then we had this last one, which was that guy who did a Drive Angry 3D or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, wow, this is really hitting, rock bottom. And it turns out that those guys are not going to get involved in that either, because I guess they just want to make more 3D movies with, I think the guys who made the script for Feast 1 and 2 were actually at one point considered to write the script for the remake of Hellraiser. And those guys, I mean, gosh, they came from Project Greenlight, I think.
Well, and I had thought that when you do a remake, often they just use the original script, right?
Yeah, I guess what they were trying to do was remake it, reinvent it.
Yeah.
Basically, if I can just, speak my mind, I think they were okay, well, we got Hellraiser 8, and they needed to keep the rights before they reverted back to Disney.
Yeah.
Because the Weinstein Company was supposed to, I think they were supposed to make another movie up to a certain amount of time. Otherwise, the rights will revert back to the Disney Company, which originally, well, they were the last to own the rights, I think. So that's why they made Hellraiser Revelations.
Yeah, and
franchise in their hands, in the Weinstein Company.
And we'll get to Hellraiser Revelations too, which is
Yeah. Hellraiser Revelations is pretty much like Hellraiser Bloodline was at one point, because when they finished Bloodline, they just finished it so they could, move on to Hellraiser 5 and 6.
Yeah.
That's been, said in interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
But the remake, I don't even know what the general plan would be for that. I mean,
yeah.
Would it have Pinhead? Would it have something else?
Well, and Hellraiser movies are also disconnected from each other. I mean, ever since number 4, you could kind of say that every Hellraiser movie has been a Hellraiser remake. I mean, if you use that definition of just wanting to reboot the series, or
I guess even though Hellseeker brings back Kirsty.
Yeah, but it's a Kirsty that it's like, what is she doing? I mean, when this is, yeah, she plots to murder 5 people and send them to hell just so that she doesn't have to go. I mean, that's not like the Kirsty that we know.
Yeah, well, originally, I don't know if you guys ever read the script for Hellseeker. It was supposed to be a character named Kirsty, but not the Kirsty Cotton. And it was really weird.
Who came up with that idea?
I don't even know. It was this really weird script that started off with a scene where she was, like, pregnant in a car with her husband, and she was, like, counting down, square roots between contractions. I don't even know what... it was by the same guy who wrote Hellworld sequels. So, I think you can find it online, that script for the Hellseeker one. It was just a weird script.
Well, and a lot of the later ones, right, they just took scripts for movies that weren't Hellraiser related and modified them to be Hellraiser movies.
Oh yeah,
Deader is one like that, and Hellworld.
Hellworld. I don't know.
And Inferno too, I think, right? Was originally something else.
I think so. Doug Bradley did mention to me when I met him after Inferno that he was like not happy at the fact that they've been adapting and rewriting other scripts to make Hellraiser movies.
Yeah.
Deader was a really weird example of that because the original script was from this guy, I think it was Neil Marshall Stevens. And it was a very weird story, but I think it might have actually worked by itself if they just hadn't tried to, put Hellraiser in there.
Yeah.
About this weird cult that, kind of like weird cult thing that would bring back people from the dead, and there was like this other dimension and stuff. It was really not a bad idea. And I think I once saw Neil Marshall Stevens in a web forum, and he was not happy at all about what they had done to his script.
Oh.
He was not happy.
So he pretty much lost control of it, and they did what they wanted with it after they bought it.
Yeah. I guess that's what they do in Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, and our next thing is they made an announcement of a 25th anniversary edition of Weaveworld illustrated by Richard Kirk, who did the illustrations in the Maximilian Bacchus that came out a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
So I think this sounds pretty cool. I mean, I'm really happy with the Weaveworld that I've got, but I probably would be somebody that would buy it.
Definitely. I think that guy also made some art for Imagica, didn't he?
Oh, the paper, was it the paperback ones where there's 2 of them?
I think so. I know that I've seen Apex Amendios drawn by that guy.
Yeah. I don't really buy the paperbacks, and I remember when Imagica came out in 2 books, I wasn't really happy about it. I didn't buy it, but it's kind of cool if they illustrated it.
We're talking about the art from Richard Kirk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, I love it. I got the Maximilian Bacchus movie book right here in my hand.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful book. I mean,
It is. It's great. And it was really cool to be able to get a story that Clive wrote long before he wrote any of his books of blood.
Mm-hmm. I think that Weaveworld is basically one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the first books I read from Clive Barker. And it's got some amazing visuals in there with a lot of potential for this guy to create some pretty wild artwork.
And that book showed people that he's not just a horror writer, that he can do, really good fantasy kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the things that marked Clive's shift into the genre of the fantastique rather than horror.
People still want to pigeonhole him and call him a horror writer, of course, because that's easy. Because he's, Mr. Books of Blood, Mr. Hellraiser.
Have you ever read Weaveworld, Roger?
Yeah, many years ago. I don't remember a whole lot of it.
Yeah, I remember the whole thing with the carpet.
Yeah.
Was it the fugue?
Yeah, the fugue.
Yeah. That's just amazing visuals right there. I mean, when Cal Mooney is climbing the house of the old lady that passed away to catch a pigeon, and he falls back, and the moving men are carrying stuff from the old lady's house, and there's like the carpet just sprawled on the I guess it's like the backyard.
Yeah.
And it like feels itself floating on top of this huge landscape, and it's like this magical moment where as a reader I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And then he gets that angel thing, that angel creature in the end, who's like, devoted to actually destroying the people,
Uriel, right? The angel that was supposed to guard the gates of Eden.
Yeah, he was in the middle of the desert, right? At one point, It was like a huge garden made of sand, and that's just the kind of visuals that I completely surrender to that.
The empty quarter is what they called it, right? And there's a tie-in to Clive Barker's Jericho, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's amazing right there. I mean, I actually just made the connection right now that you mentioned. I was like the empty quarter, and in my mind I was going like, hey, that reminds me of Jericho.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, which was really cool, and we'll probably talk about video games in another podcast because there's a couple really good ones. Mm-hmm. And let's see, so the next thing would be the Abarat trailer, the Abarat 3 trailer that Mark Miller did. This has been a little bit contentious, I think, for some people. I think it's kind of cool. It's, any kind of a video trailer that you get for a book is just, to me, is just a cool kind of an extra credit. It's not something that you have to have anyway.
Yeah, I guess.
And I really, all the moving paintings and stuff was really cool. I got to see where they filmed that too.
Oh yeah, Roger, what did you think of that animation of the Abarat Islands at the end?
Oh, I love the way they did that. That was totally the best part of that trailer.
Yeah.
Just the animations moving through everything, back and forth through the mountains, over, up, around things.
And it is a little jarring to see a person, like a human being, and then comparing that to like what the painting of Christopher Carrion looks like, and also that person is standing in the paintings. So that's a little jarring, but I didn't mind it.
Wasn't it Clive that like painted?
Painted on top of his face.
Emoff?
Yeah.
Christopher Carrion was played by special effects artist Stephen Emoff.
Yeah, and I got to meet him also.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was, and I was thinking as I was the first time, I watched that trailer, I was like, isn't Christopher Carrion, he's supposed to be missing his nose? But, Clive painted it, so...
I guess it's one of those artistic liberties that they do because it's it probably I mean, gosh, they did that on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
It's actually amazing that it looks so good.
Yeah.
Visually.
Yeah. And it's kind of a nice thing. I think Abarat 3 did pretty well. It sold pretty well, didn't it?
Abarat 3? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would imagine that most people who got 1 and 2 bought 3.
Yeah. It was a long time in between, and on Twitter, Clive was apologizing to people for how long it was in between number 2 and number 3. It was 7 years, I think, right?
I think so, yeah, because Abarat 2 came out in 2004, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then Mr. Begone was after that.
But, in all honesty, I think, Clive has been, having some problems and facing some health issues with all that, the throat polyps that he had to endure surgery for.
Yeah.
Several times, actually. So, I mean, I know that, some writers have this, huge output and they just go and make like a book a year or something like Stephen King used to do.
Yeah.
But, like Clive Barker once said in an interview, this stuff takes time. And that is something that, as a process, is very dense artistically, I think, because of the paintings. I mean, just the whole setting down into canvas of the whole Abarat universe.
Yeah. And that's pretty unique to him. No other writer is going to be, writing young adult fiction where they're painting their own illustrations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big deal to me for the Abarat, because his drawings and stuff before, doing the Books of Blood, they're pretty cool, but it wouldn't be something, I'd hang on my wall. But these new paintings and stuff, really something, you can show off, give these books to, your little cousins or friends, it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got cute cats, you got, like, ocean landscapes with fantastic fish.
And there's also some kind of scary, stuff like Christopher Carrion and Mater Motley.
And aren't these getting darker as they go along?
Oh, yeah.
I think actually Clive apologized for making this one so dark. I mean, he was like, I hear that some people were buying this for the kids and they're complaining that it's a little too dark. And I think I read that on Twitter. Well,
and it's a 5-book series now, so we're right in the middle. I mean, of the overall arc, we're right in the middle of the conflict.
Yeah.
It hasn't been resolved yet.
Have you guys read the book yet?
I have.
No, I've read the first one. I was holding off to read the second one until the third one came out, but I still have to get the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have the third one here. I have the book in my hand, but I must confess that I had to go to Spain for a couple of months, and then I went to California, and I haven't had a chance to pick up the book and read it yet.
When when it came out, I pre-ordered it, or when it was about to come out, I pre-ordered it on Amazon, and then I found out that when I was going to be going to a conference in California was at the same time that he was doing a book signing where you had to buy the book, so then I bought another one. So, and I wanted to read them both. I wanted to reread the first two and then read the third one, so I hadn't actually read the third one until long after that book signing.
I think a lot of people are going to do that. Are going to be reading the whole saga every time a new book comes out.
Yeah. And you just feel like it's, because there's such a gap in between. You just feel like, where did we leave off there? I can't remember. What was Candy doing?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, I haven't read the book yet, so I'm probably going to start the book tonight because, I've been inspired by the podcast now. But I'm wondering what will happen when those bugs in the pyramids will show up.
Oh, man, yeah.
That sounds like it's going to be a really cool chapter. The brood sack.
Yeah, sack brood.
Brood.
Yeah.
There you go. I need to read Days of Magic, Knights of War again. That's one of the things that's really making me curious about what's going to happen. And I'm imagining that there will be kind of a war between that thing with the boy with the curl. The
Comexo kid.
Yeah, the Comexo kid. Yeah, I think we're going to see that kid probably show up in a kind of incarnation or something. I don't know. This is just me throwing stuff in the air from what I've read in the first 2 books.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping for some really cool stuff to happen.
Well, I think the stuff you're talking about gets addressed. So, without getting into it too much. And so then the next thing, the next thing that came out in 2011, there was an ebook of Maximilian Bacchus. I didn't buy it because I had the other one on my shelf already. Mm-hmm. But yeah, really.
I got the uncorrected proof of Maximilian Bacchus.
Oh, really?
And I got the hardcover signed edition. So.
Yeah, I got the hardcover signed edition.
Now, what was the difference between the ebook? Just the missing paintings, or?
That's a good question. I don't even know. I haven't even looked at it.
Well, my uncorrected proof didn't have paintings at all. So.
Oh, yeah.
Paperback.
Yeah.
Paperback book with the text, and it still had all those cute fonts and everything. Mm-hmm. It was just a paperback with a little thumbnail of the original cover on the front and said, "The Adventures of Mr. Maximilian Bacchus, uncorrected proof."
So weren't they also planning to do The Candle in the Cloud, kind of give it the same treatment as Maximilian Bacchus?
I think so, yeah. I read something on Revelations about it.
Yeah.
That was like Clive's first novel when he was like a teenager, right?
Yeah.
It's great that, this Clive Barker Juvenilia is coming out.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, we hear about these things from, I think, Bad Moon Books and Revelations. We hear about them so far in advance. Like, it'll be like 2 years before you actually get it. Or we're going to talk about The Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies. That, we found out about years before it actually came out.
Yeah, it's great to finally hold a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that book, The Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies, I kind of think of it as like a Shadows in Eden Volume 2. Do you guys have Shadows in Eden?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I have the hardcover cloth-bound one. And it's got that kind of disturbing painting on the inside binding.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm gonna leave that painting for whoever's listening to go buy the book.
Yeah. I don't really want to describe it.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, but it's a really interesting interior decoration for a book.
So our next thing was the new Hellraiser comic series. We talked a little bit about it. I've been collecting them the best I can. I've got the first 8. I think number 9 is supposed to be out right now. And like we said, the first 8 are supposed to be kind of a story in and of themselves that set up the remaining one that's going to be an ongoing series. And I think at that point, then Clive Barker and Chris Monfett kind of pull back, and other people are taking over. But I don't know too much about it.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
It's gotten a lot of critical acclaim, and the fans have loved this series. And I kind of wonder, when it's something, Clive has co-written comic books with people a lot. And I kind of wonder what that process is. It seems like they sit down together and they kind of hammer out some story ideas, and then Clive is like, okay, now you go with it and check in with me here once in a while.
No, I think that would be accurate. Yeah.
Do you have the Steve Niles and Clive Barker, what are those, the Night of the Living Dead London comics?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, that was an interesting. It's just 2 issues. And
Yeah.
It's sometime in the near future, and
Yeah.
there's been a zombie plague. And,
and it's kind of like, I think it's like saying, okay, this stuff happened in America, so this was and then some lady got on an airplane, that was sick, and she went into London, and then suddenly, the whole of England got hit with this, and how the royal family was trying to deal with it.
Yeah, that the royal palace of Buckingham is surrounded by zombies, and
and they're trying to live their opulent life and not and ignoring the people.
Yeah, and of course there's like a priest or a cardinal, actually, I think, right?
Yeah.
Who has a taste for beautiful boys. And, there's like this guy who might or might not be a zombie. It's an interesting experiment. I mean,
I actually went to a Clive Barker signing for Midnight Meat Train in Burbank. I flew down to Burbank just to go to that one, and I had brought my Night of the Living Dead comics to get signed by Clive Barker, and the Del Housen that owns Dark Delicacies, the bookstore that I was at. He said, we know Steve Niles. He'll come over and sign these if we call him. I'm like, oh, yeah, please. And they called him, and he came down and signed him for me. And I got to talk to him because I live in Alaska. So I'm like, so do people ever complain to you about 30 Days of Night? And he said, oh, my God, all the time. I said because they really have 60 Days of Night in Barrow? And he's like, yes, I hear that all the time, but 30 days sounds better.
Oh, okay. I had no idea about that. That's actually pretty interesting. So they don't really have 30 days of night. They have 60 days of night.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve Niles is on Facebook. I mean...
Yeah, and he posts a lot on Twitter, too.
Yeah, he's got his own website. That I think it's pretty accessible to send him, like, messages through Facebook or something.
Yeah, I should find him on there. I've been following him on Twitter, but I should check out Facebook too. He was a really cool guy to talk to. I hung around with him, after I'd been through Clive Barker's line. I hung around with and talked with him for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. There's one thing about Night of the Living Dead that I just wish had been done differently, which is the comic book seems to be like painted art, but it's printed in black and white.
Yeah.
So. I wish it had been printed in color.
It's kind of like ink painted, isn't it? Or I don't know. I don't know the first thing about comic books and how they work.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was an interesting. Maybe they were going for that whole Night of the Living Dead feel, like in black and white.
That could be. Yeah.
It's an interesting story, though. I think it's a really obscure story, though.
It is. Yeah. I mean, who would have thought? And I just stumbled on it one day, like back in the 90s. But who would have thought that Clive Barker would be doing some kind of a Night of the Living Dead thing?
Yeah, with Queen Elizabeth of England.
Yeah.
Other characters who look suspiciously like Prince Charles and Diana.
But kind of going back to what we were talking about, like that was co-written together too, and I kind of wonder if that was kind of a similar situation in the way they kind of collaborate that.
Yeah. Speaking of collaboration, if I can throw a little item on the conversation.
Sure.
I just saw recently this documentary called Horror Cafe, which was done by BBC, which had like, let me see if I get this straight. There was Clive Barker, Peter Atkins, John Carpenter, Edward Foreman, and Lisa Tuttle, and another guy. I forgot his name now. And it's
was Ramsey Campbell?
Yeah, I think it was Ramsey Campbell, yeah. And they're, like, making this round table, they're having, like, dinner or tea or something, and they're, like, coming up with a collaborative story for, the ultimate millennium horror story. And it's a really cool documentary. If you guys could find it out there, I recommend it. I think it's on YouTube.
I think I saw somebody had posted it one time, but I didn't... a lot of the time when I'm on Facebook or whatever, I'm at home and and I don't want to start blasting videos, but when my wife and baby are there. But I always meant to go back and look at that, and I never did.
Yeah, well, that would be me. I posted that on the forum, on Roger's forum.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that was me. Because I found that and saw it, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Seeing them, throw ideas, one guy says something, then the next guy at the table picks it up and tries to add something to it. And it's an amazing, thing to see that creative process at work. Was
that in Clive Barker General, maybe, in the forum? I'll have to go back and find it.
I can send you the link.
Yeah.
I can send you the link. It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
On television discussion or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really obscure story, the Night of the Living Dead graphic novel.
Yeah. Yeah, and so these I highly recommend these Hellraiser comics. They're really good, and they're also something I'd forgotten to mention, but they put a lot of the old epic Hellraiser stories together into these kind of best of new collected editions of Hellraiser comics.
Yeah, I saw they're on trade paperback number 5 or something, or 6, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and you can buy them individually or you can buy them collected, I think. And I got the collected number 1. But there's also I think Epic did a series that was the best of, and they're different.
They did.
Yeah, so it's confusing for somebody that just wants all of them.
Yeah, well, one is from Boom Comics and the other is from Marvel, I guess.
Yeah.
But if I can say something, I think that there is a difference in quality between these new best of collected editions and the actual original issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you put them one side to side, it's like looking at an original photo and looking at a second generation copy.
Oh, so you think the originals are much better then?
The artwork is much more crisp.
Oh, okay.
Its colors are much more vibrant. The lines are better defined.
Okay.
Definitely. I think there's something in the transfer. I don't know, the lithography. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know how they transfer this, but
yeah.
It's like a second generation copy of the original art pages, and it's something that's really obvious if you hold one of the epic Marvel comics next to the best of page.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference. It's a little more blurry. It's not as crisp. So if you guys out there want to see these Hellraiser stories, I would suggest you guys go on eBay and try to find the original epic issues. Sometimes they're not really that expensive. I mean, I got one set one time of the Hellraiser comics from the 90s. I got that 20 comic book set, or 21. I got it for under $40.
Jeez. Yeah, and the economy, I mean, the way the economy's kind of taken a dive has really hurt comic book values. Which is, I mean, I guess it's nice if you want to start buying them. I think I just bought the entire run of Nightbreed, the Nightbreed comics on eBay. I haven't gotten them in the mail yet, but for $20, and there's 25 issues.
Yeah, and some of those final story arcs are actually written by Nicholas Vince.
Oh, really?
Who played the Chatter?
Yeah.
He was very involved with the writing of the Nightbreed comics after a certain point.
Huh. Well, I'm looking. I owned already the ones where they met Rawhead Rex, because I thought that sounded really cool. So I bought those, back in when they came out. But I never got all of the Nightbreed comics. At some point, I think in my collecting, I had decided if I'm going to spend my money more judiciously, I better only buy things that Clive Barker's directly involved in, because otherwise, where does it end? I remember one time I was at a comic book store, and I bought this thing that was called The Monsters of Clive Barker, and it was this little, newsprint, hand-drawn pictures of, Cenobites and Nightbreed and stuff, and by some guy, and it was unofficial, and I was like, why did I just waste my money on this thing? I mean, the art was terrible, And at that point, I decided, no more paperbacks. I'm only going to get the hardcovers and not going to buy any of this ancillary kind of tangential things that are just only vaguely related.
That's a good decision. If you're a really hardcore fan, at some point you just start to realize that, I need to focus and I need to buy stuff that's really going to be important.
Yeah.
You can only have so many paperback copies of Hellbound Hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. Or those copies of the Books of Blood, those paperbacks with the Halloween masks on the front.
Yeah. Yeah. So at one point you just think, I'll just try to buy good stuff. And you just buy hardcovers and you try to buy stuff that's done by Clive.
And luckily now with the internet, we've got access to, reviews and people talking about these things, so we know what's good and what's not, or we get an idea.
Oh, yeah. Now, I remember up until, I think, Hellraiser 4, when I had no idea what was being done out there. I had no idea, I only knew about things when they were actually out. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like blissful ignorance.
Yeah, totally. Like when I went to that bookstore and I would check every day and go through the aisles and I would look for Clive Barker and I go, oh, there's something new. It's like, oh, it's Clive Cussler.
Yeah. Oh, man. I think we've all been there. All the Clive Barker fans have always gone to the bookstalls and they go like, Clive. Oh, there's Clive. Oh, Clive Cussler.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Clive Cussler is a great novelist. I'm not knocking him. But,
I don't know.
That's true.
Oh, and then now with the internet, you keep seeing. I don't know if you guys have ever run into this theater games.
No.
Oh yeah, that was the original Clive Barker.
Yeah, some other guy. It was written like way in the 50s, I think. It's just a book on the theater.
Yeah, that's Clive Barker.
Different Clive Barker.
Different Clive Barker. Yeah, he was involved with theater in England, I think. And actually, I think that I read this. And I think it was either Shadows in Eden or some other interview. Clive Barker actually said that when he started getting big with the Books of Blood, he once got a letter from that Clive Barker saying, you got to stop doing that because people are confusing me with you. I don't think that at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I don't know if that's a problem anymore.
Well, yeah, that gentleman has passed away since.
Oh.
But yeah, I remember distinctly that Clive Barker did recall that anecdotal episode of getting a letter from that Clive Barker saying, I'm Clive Barker.
Yeah.
For Clive Barker, I'm not you, so I'm not happy with this. But yeah.
So this, I think, the Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies, that was something that finally came out in 2011. What do you guys think of a book that's made out of introductions? I've never heard of anything like this before, and I'm probably like a third of the way through reading that right now. I think it's really cool. And God bless Phil and Sarah, because they're like the best fans of anything on earth, that they can actually publish books.
And it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and I'm taking the dust jacket off. It's just a really well printed, well bound book. I love the cover. And like I said, to me this is like a Shadows in Eden Volume 2. And
it is. Although a lot of the stuff I think there came out of Shadows in Eden.
Yeah, I guess some of the stuff is kind of like repeated.
Yeah. But I spent a lot of time before this book came out trying to collect the things that have these introductions. Like I have H.R. Giger's Necronomicon, and I have the screenplay for From Dusk Till Dawn. And I only probably have maybe a quarter of the introductions that are in this book.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to ask you, what's the connection between From Dusk Till Dawn and Clive Barker?
I have no idea. I don't know why. I don't know how they approached him to do that. Well, sorry, Roger. Were you saying something?
Oh no, I was just watching the commentary for that movie today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nothing about Clive yet, though.
Oh.
I'll hang in there though and see what they say.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how that came about.
You know what Clive was involved with was, you remember those new editions of the Universal Monster movies? What was it called? Legacy.
Yeah, when the Van Helsing came out, they reissued everything.
Oh.
Yeah, the Legacy collection. I have like the Dracula, Wolfman, and Frankenstein sets for those monsters. And Clive Barker shows up in the Wolfman documentary that's on the DVD.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Talking about. And he also shows up on, I think it's either Dracula. He's talking about, Dracula as a seducing vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And he also shows up in The Bride of Frankenstein, because I think that's one of his favorite movies. He shows up on a documentary about that, talking about the movie, and, And, of course, he ended up producing that Bill Condon movie, Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
Which won an Oscar. Which is a really cool movie, by the way. I really recommend it.
Yeah.
Gods and Monsters with Sir McKellen and what's the name of the other guy? Fraser.
Yeah. Right, Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser, right, of course. And he actually mentions that in the Bride of Frankenstein documentary. They actually show a couple of images from Gods and Monsters as well. So yeah, I think you can find that on YouTube.
That's cool.
I can try looking it up, or
Yeah. Well, if you can find it, I'll put links to those. Actually, since you mentioned Brendan Fraser, that kind of reminds me. I had heard at one point that Clive Barker wrote a screenplay for The Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the studio went a different direction and made the movies that they made. But has anyone ever heard or seen that screenplay?
And not the screenplay as such, but I have a Fangoria magazine that talks about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Back when he thought that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was an interesting story. I think it involved like the pyramid as a kind of lament configuration at one point. And I think that one of the few elements that remained from that original idea was, you remember when Brendan Fraser has that book of the dead or something that has like a lock with a puzzle on it?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I saw that in the theater, I think, and I never, went back and saw it again.
Oh yeah. Well, the lock with a puzzle on that book was one of the few details that remained from Clive's original idea.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's all referred in Revelations websites, and actually I'm looking for it on my files right now. So
that would be a cool thing to get. Other screenplays I've been looking for are Rawhead Rex and Underworld.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean I don't know where those live or where you can find them, but
there's this guy at Rogers Forum at Fifth Dominion who is a big collector of all things Rawhead Rex.
Yeah.
Really cool looking busts and sculptures. It's amazing how much people can hold that movie dear to their heart, because honestly it's such a cheesy movie. I mean,
it was a big letdown for Clive at the time.
Oh yeah, those red LED eyes that the creature had.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Well, and he wrote the movie, and then they're like, "All right, we're done with you," and they wouldn't he wanted to be on the set and help him design the monster, and it's like, no, we got this. We don't need you anymore.
Well, yeah, I guess Clive should have taken some notes from how the movie process goes at the time. I mean, they did the same thing to him with, they did the same thing with Nightbreed at one point. And
yeah.
They were like, oh, wait, the monsters are, they were like, one executive said, hey, you got to be careful. You're making the monsters look like the good guys.
Yeah.
It's like,
uh-oh.
And, Lord of Illusions, I think, also had some problems.
Oh, really? I'd always kind of thought that Lord of Illusions was the one where he pretty much was the master and had got everything. Well, I mean, he had some problems with the MPAA that he baited them with footage of like the families that were murdered and stuff like that, giving them stuff that they could cut out so that he could keep the things that he really wanted.
He eventually got the director's cut on laser.
Yeah, so, and nobody even remembers the theatrical cut anymore.
No, it's like, how much was it? 7 minutes or 11 minutes that were cut from the theatrical edition. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that you're right, that Lord of Illusions was probably his best, in terms of control of directorial vision. I think it's probably the one that, was...
Well, maybe Hellraiser too. I mean, I think he had a lot of freedom in that movie.
Yeah, too bad that, Black Monday or something hit, and they lost like 1/3 of the budget.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that really put a hinder on the production process.
Yeah, like the engineer and the effects of the light and stuff coming out of the box and all that.
Yeah. Hey Roger, what's your favorite Clive Barker movie?
Nightbreed, definitely Nightbreed. Lord of Illusions, it's a little uneven, but it's got some really great scenes and stuff in there, and his commentary is really good on that too. Yeah. He explains, why he did things, the ramifications of it. Just really good listen to if you have the time.
I guess my favorite movie is also probably Nightbreed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to come up with a favorite.
Nightbreed had problems too. And it had problems of just being advertised as a slasher movie.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the poster. It's like, Laurie thought she knew her boyfriend. Laurie was wrong. And then,
And then they'll show, like, Decker with his mask on and the knife or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, Cronenberg was great in that, though,
yeah.
wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, really good.
Really soft-spoken. And
it's hard to read Cabal without thinking of all these people, from Nightbreed now.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty true, yeah. I read the book. Wait, I think I read the book before I actually saw the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I did read the comics before I read the book. The Nightbreed comics.
Mm-hmm.
I owned at the time at least the first 4 or 5 comics of the Nightbreed. So I kind of knew a little bit about, how the story went. And then I read the book while I was in Canada. And then I saw the movie, I think so, yeah. And the comics were great. I mean, the original run of the comics was just amazing art. It started off with the adaptation of the movie,
Yeah. Did they change it where they didn't? No, they let Narcisse live, right?
Yeah, Narcisse went on to become this kind of like comic relief in the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was also this witch character that had like the face of a witch but the body of a hot woman, and that was some pretty funny stuff. Yeah. And then of course it goes on to make like Boone and his girlfriend Laurie, like there's just a crazy thing where they have this power to play music and they animate dead creatures.
Oh wow!
And, yeah, I always wondered if they were like playing like country music, like that country music at the end.
Yeah, right. I'll be really interested to read that whole series from beginning to end. I guess from what I've heard, it doesn't wrap up, like it just kind of stops.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nicholas Vince had this whole story arc that he wanted to conclude, but they said, no, you have like 2 comics to finish it. So,
wow.
Yeah, so he was like, okay, well, he did his best to try to wrap up, but basically a lot of loose threads were left.
Yeah.
So, but it's still a pretty entertaining show, a pretty entertaining comic book to read. I mean, they had some really weird characters there, like a guy whose face would stretch, and he would like stick weird stuff on his gums to use his teeth, like knives.
Oh yeah, he's on the cover of one of them.
Yeah, that is a really funny character, and pretty scary looking too.
Yeah. Well, the next thing on our list here is the Abarat companion book, and that Phil and Sarah Stokes published, kind of like the Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies. So I haven't read this yet. I held on to it because I wanted to finish reading the Abarat 3. I didn't want it to get spoiled for me. And but a lot of this is about Kodiak Elementary School here in Alaska, and interviews with the kids there and the teacher that's been teaching Abarat.
Oh yeah, just looking at it. I'm looking at the book right now.
It's called Beneath the Surface of Clive Barker's Abarat.
Yeah, I was trying to find that part with the kids. Is it like page 70 or something?
I think so. And I haven't... Yeah, Questioning Clive is the section there.
Oh, right, I see it. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I leafed through it. Basically, I've read like half of it. And so far, it's really, really a cool book. Very limited edition, I think.
Yeah.
I have the ebook as well.
Oh, yeah. The ebook was actually... I think the ebook came out first, right? And then this one you had to pre-order, and there was a really limited run of this trade paperback one.
Yeah. I couldn't help myself. I was like, I'm not really a guy who enjoys ebooks, but I was like, well, it's a Clive ebook, so I bought the ebook, and I was like, wow, this looks like it's going to be really cool, and I was not disappointed because afterwards, Phil and Sarah were informing everybody that, hey, we got the books printed, we're going to send them over. And I got the book, and I was, like, really happy.
And I actually got Phil and Sarah to sign this one. A lot of them, they'll have Clive Barker sign, but it doesn't occur to them that we would want their signatures, too. Because they're pretty humble.
Right, you told me that. I was like, you lucky guy. You got them to sign your book.
Well, and I always put it in the email now when I order something from them, and you got to sign it, too. Because I think the first encyclopedia one that they sent, they didn't sign it.
Yeah. Well,
now, is this a companion book to the first 3, or is it the whole?
I think it's for the whole series in general. It's kind of more of a general, like how the books are made and.
Yeah, because I think that there are paintings shown in this book that haven't shown up in the volumes yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at pictures of Christopher Carrion right now, and I haven't seen some of these yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to show up or not, but also I have to say that one of the characters that looks really intriguing to me is like Carrion's father.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there's this chapter on Abarat 2 where they're like talking about his dad, and that like there was a big fire in the Carrion castle or something.
Right.
And he was never seen again. I'm also kind of betting that this guy's going to come back. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you will find out soon.
All right. Also, on the topic of those books that Phil and Sarah have been publishing, there's also that series, Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy.
Yes, and I almost put those in our main topic here, but I went back and read the publishing dates on them, and it's like 2009 and 2010, I think. But I don't know for a fact that that's when we actually got them. I kind of wonder if number 2 came out and, got shipped in 2011. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Number 2?
Yeah.
I think I got it in 2010.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I like had put off getting number 1, and then 2 came out. I was like, oh, geez, and I emailed them like, can I order both? And they still had some of number 1, so I got both.
Oh, lucky. You were lucky.
Yeah. Do they still have any left?
I don't know.
It's really, they're really detailed.
And they're really limited edition too. They're like 250 books each run. So
yeah, and I finished reading the first book already, and it's like some 202 almost 300 pages, and it hasn't even gotten up to the plays that we have in like Colossus and Incarnation, or Incarnations and Forms of Heaven.
Oh yeah, that goes up until Day of the Dog or something like that.
Yeah. When they move to London is the end of that book. Mm-hmm. And the start of the new one, the second book, which I haven't started reading yet because I'm reading The Painter right now.
Oh yeah. But definitely we can talk about these volumes, at a later podcast.
Yeah.
I think they're really interesting.
Yeah, and yes, I think once we've read them, it'll be a little better. So yeah, that's the Abarat companion book. We can talk really quickly about Mark Miller's project. Clive Barker Presents The Sickness. Mm-hmm. So he showed me a trailer for that while I was over there. It's kind of it's kind of similar to a zombie movie. It's like, but it's like she's not the main character. She's not really exactly a zombie. She's got this disease that kind of makes her like a zombie, but she can think. Uh-huh. And so she's kind of like forcing her boyfriend to help her out, and everywhere they go, like, have you seen Dead Alive? The guy, there's the guy that's protecting his mother, even though she's a zombie. So it's kind of that sort of a vibe. He's protecting his fiance, or because it doesn't occur to him that she's lost, or even though she's killing people and stuff. That's kind of I only saw a trailer, so I don't really know all the ins and outs of it, but it looks pretty good.
I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I think to some extent it kind of reminds me of the short story The Life of Death. You remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
This woman becomes the carrier of a huge disease, but she doesn't suffer from it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So everyone that she is it has sex with, or just meets, or whatever, they die.
Yeah. I don't know.
I can't remember, but yeah.
But yeah, so I would understand why her boyfriend would want to protect her. Like, if people say, hey, that woman's a zombie,
yeah,
they want to kill her or something, and,
Yeah.
I don't know. It could go either way. I mean, it's one of those things that, it's a Mark Miller project. I don't really think of it as a Clive Barker project, to be honest.
Right.
Basically, Clive Barker is pretty much just offering his support.
Right.
His name for the project. But, But, hey, it can go either way. I mean, right now we got shows like The Walking Dead on AMC.
Which is unbelievably good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've enjoyed the mid-season finale.
I keep hoping the new one will come out, because I subscribe to it on iTunes, and I check there every day.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't pay any attention to schedules and things. I don't even watch TV hardly anymore, so...
I think anything that can steer away from the current, glittery vampire thing is a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even if it means going to zombies and,
Glittery zombies, I don't know about that one.
I prefer glittery werewolves.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this whole thing, vampires versus werewolves, I hated that in, the Underworld movies.
Isn't there a new one out?
Yeah, I think so. And it's like, I don't know. To me, it's kind of, it makes me think like the Van Helsing movie. It just makes me think like, let's get every classic movie monster we can and and throw them together and make them fight each other. It's like something a 5-year-old would come up with.
Hey, it's a monster mash.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, do you guys remember the old Universal monster movies like House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, where they would have like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein?
Yeah, they just throw all the monsters together and have a good time, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case of like Underworld or Twilight, you know, it's like they're taking it seriously.
I know.
And they're trying to make it sound like they're original when they call a lycanthrope. It's not that. It's a lichen.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a werewolf. That's so cliche. This is a lichen.
Yeah, totally different.
Absolutely. But, you know, I think that Underworld, I think I've seen the first one and maybe a bit of the second.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like it's more of an action movie that happens to have, like, vampires and werewolves in it at some point. Because they're, like, shooting each other. I'm like, why are they shooting each other? I mean, these guys have fangs, they can fly, they have power. Yeah. You know?
And it's like they want to make a Resident Evil or Aeon Flux or Underworld. They're all really, I mean, they all have totally different stories, but they're all really similar in a lot of ways, too.
It just blows my mind that, you know, things like this get picked up and they turn into franchises, but things like Nightbreed, you know, just kind of, you know.
Yeah.
It just frustrates the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, can you imagine if we had like a franchise of Nightbreed? That would be awesome.
Yeah, or like, like the Aragon movie was terrible.
Oh, that's Dragons, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, this 12-year-old kid's book gets to get made into a terrible movie, but I don't know.
Something that says in the back cover, like, oh, this book won the Nestle Award Smarties. Really? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so then Texas Frightmare Weekend and Spooky Empire. I went to... This was my first time going to a horror convention, and I wanted to give it a shot, and it was great. I mean, I had a really good time, but, you spend so much money. You don't, I mean, it never occurred to me that I would be paying $25 per signature.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I get there, and I've got my duffel bag full of Clive Barker stuff. And, you know, Ashley Lawrence and Doug Bradley were there, so it's like, okay, now they get to sign each thing, too. And I had Doug Bradley sign my Nightbreed screenplay because he's, because he's in it. And Ashley Lawrence signed the Hellraiser and the Hellraiser screenplay, and Doug Bradley did. And by the time I got done, it was probably like $1,200 I spent on all this.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and I'm so, and you get used to book signings where you go and they tell you can have one, you buy the book that you buy, plus you can have 2 other things, and that's it. And that's what their rules are. But this was like, it's unlimited, but you have to pay.
I guess that's the business side of conventions.
Yeah, everybody in the convention, is there to make money, which was fine. I got, and I also, there's a lot of extra stuff that I got to do. I got to see the Tall Man, from the Phantasm movies, which was pretty cool, and Don Coscarelli and the actor that...
Right?
What's that?
Angus Scrimm.
Angus Scrimm, yes. I actually got to ride in the elevator with him. And I wanted to say, I'm actually on my way to get in line to have you sign this DVD. Can you just do it here? But I didn't do that. I got in line.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've all had our, weird moments, awkward moments at conventions.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to confess to an awkward moment I had when I met Doug Bradley. It's one of those, anecdotes that I had just met Doug Bradley. He had just signed my Nightbreed Chronicles and my Hellraiser Chronicles as well.
Yeah, I brought those too to the...
Yeah, those are pretty awesome books, by the way.
Yeah.
And, I went to the bar at the cinema. I was there talking to my brother, and and we're just chilling. And then I thought, well, I'm going to the bathroom, and I'm going back to see Hellbound, which was the next movie. And, what do you know? I walk into the bathroom, and there's Doug Bradley. I'm like, oh, shoot.
in the urinal?
In the urinal.
Oh.
It was embarrassing.
Oh, jeez.
I just talked to this guy for like 15 minutes, telling him I'm a big fan, and I just walk into the bathroom, and he's right here, and he's going to think that, look at this guy.
Yeah. So did you turn around and leave?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'll just give him his space, and that was it. I'm not sure if he ever saw me, but I was like, "Oops, there you go." Just walk out really quietly. So that was an awkward moment, I guess. A lot of people. Yeah. I remember. Do you guys know about Alan Moore, the writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote like Watchmen and He actually has shared stories that at one point he was really famous because of Watchmen and all that stuff. He had fans follow him into the bathroom and stick their comics under the door for him to sign.
Oh, under the stall door?
Yes.
Oh.
I guess that's just a line that you don't cross.
No. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So convention was. I'll probably never do it again, but it was a really cool thing to go to. The next thing is Abarat 3, Absolute Midnight. I think we've talked about it quite a bit already. I would just say that it's really good. I know that you guys are both going to end up reading it anyway, so.
Yep. Starting it tonight.
Yeah. Lord of Illusions Extended Edition soundtrack. So, Jose, you have that, right?
Yeah. I got that from... that was published by a label called Intrada. It's Intrada Special Collection. It's a 1,200 copy limited edition. It's a 2 CD score for Lord of Illusions. It's an amazing piece.
Is it a discrete score? It's not like the other one where it's got dialogue and stuff.
Yeah, it's just a score. It
okay.
doesn't have Erasure or
or that Laura song or.
Yeah, that Laura by Brave Combo.
Yeah.
Mambo song. It doesn't have that. It's just strictly score, and it's 2 CDs. And the second CD also has a bunch of demo tracks that were composed by Simon Boswell in the early stages of, composition. Really interesting to hear. There's a lot of musical cues there that are not in the commercially available soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thing to listen to. I'm a big fan of soundtracks.
Me too.
I collect soundtracks. I got, hundreds of soundtracks.
Whoa.
And I have the Nightbreed soundtrack. I have all of the Hellraiser soundtracks.
Well, all of the ones that are available, right? They don't have... You can't just buy a soundtrack for every one of those movies.
No, you can't. At least not for 7 and 8. The other and World. There are fans who do what they call bootleg soundtracks. Where they just go in... Sometimes DVDs have some DVDs might have an isolated score track.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure that Deader or Hellworld have that. It's just they just try to filter out the dialogue. It's a hit and miss.
Yeah.
But I do have from the actual composers the soundtrack for Hellraiser 5 and 6.
Oh.
Yeah. I have those soundtracks, yeah. And I have the 1 to 4 from Hellraiser, which, Christopher Young is just an amazing composer.
And he only did the first 2, right?
Yeah, he only did the first 2, and then the third one was done by, what was the third one from, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. That's one I haven't listened to much. Shucks. I have the CDs here somewhere. I'm doing this in my office. But, Hellraiser 3 has 2 different soundtrack editions. One of them is like the rock music, and the other is the score.
Oh, kind of like what they did with The Crow when the soundtrack for that came out.
Yeah, you guys remember that, right?
Yep.
Actually, there's some pretty cool music in the rock edition of the soundtrack.
There's the Lemmy version of the Hellraiser song, right?
Yeah, that song has an amazing video.
Yeah, Clive Barker directed that video.
Yeah, Lemmy's playing, I don't know what game they're playing. It's like blackjack or something.
Yeah.
And then, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool video.
Yeah, I like the Aussie version of the song a little better because I heard that first, but...
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. The composer for the Hellraiser 3 soundtrack was Randy Miller.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I think this is recorded with a Russian orchestra, I think.
But they always they took cues from Christopher Young's soundtrack, right? I mean, there's themes that are similar.
I think so, yeah.
I can't even remember. But I thought that was the case.
Mm-hmm. And then this was from 92, I think. And then there's like this beautiful edition of Hellraiser: The Chronicles, which is a 3 CD set that has like the music from Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2.
Oh, I tried to buy that on eBay, and I got outbid.
And Hellraiser 3. It's got all 3 movies, and it's a beautiful set. You just open it up, and it's like... It's a really neat one. I mean...
I have Hellraiser 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Christopher Young did an amazing job with Hellbound's soundtrack. I mean, did you guys notice that, on Spider-Man 2, like when Dr. Octopus is like... starting his experiments, there's like a few cues there that sound just like the beginning of Hellbound.
No, never noticed that.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, well I'm gonna send you guys the musical cue, and because it's done by Christopher Young as well.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
How close they are. I have the promo soundtrack of Spider-Man 2. And it's just amazing. I think it's like The Experiment. That's the name of the cue.
Mm-hmm. And
it's. I was in the movie theater watching Spider-Man 2, and I was like, dude, that's like the music from Hellbound.
Hellbound, I think, actually has a better soundtrack than Hellraiser. Because it's so much more epic and bigger.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely got that Black Mass feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you guys, I guess most fans have listened to it by now, like the Coil soundtrack?
Yeah, that would have been an interesting version if he would have put them in there.
I've never heard it. I mean, I read about it, but I've never actually heard it.
Oh, really? It's worth a listen. I'll try to find a way to send it to you. It's he originally commissioned a sound. Clive Barker originally commissioned the soundtrack for Hellraiser from the band Coil.
Yeah.
And their music ended up being rejected, but I think Clive was quoted as saying that Coil's music was something that really made his bowels churn. And,
yeah.
It would have definitely been interesting to.
And the soundtrack makes such an impact on the movie.
Oh, definitely. If it had like a rock soundtrack or something, it maybe wouldn't have become as famous as
Yeah.
No,
it's hard to know. I mean, that would be tough. So with this Lord of Illusion soundtrack, extended edition soundtrack, I tried to buy it and it was sold out. And then I went on eBay and I found somebody in Australia that said, yeah, they're going to come out in mid-January, but you can, pre-order them for me right now. So, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I ordered one. I don't know what's going to happen when it, Because I thought, I don't know, is there a different run in different countries of these things?
Sometimes there are. I mean, I know that, for example, the new album from Tom Waits has different bonus tracks in different countries, I think. So
yeah.
That might not be out of, But I think you would have been better off actually contacting the actual label. I got it from the label.
Oh, really?
I don't know, you might end up with a bootleg, but I hope not.
Well, the link that you posted on the forum, I followed that, and it said they were sold out. So then I've been on eBay, with a safe search trying to find it, and it showed up, from somebody in Australia.
Well, let us know when it arrives, if it's a real thing. It's a really beautiful soundtrack. It's got a really interesting booklet inside, and it's one of those boxes that you open up, and it's like a little plastic flap inside with one CD on each side, and it's a really cool. It's really cool beads.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
I just put it on my iPod last night, and so I can listen to it whenever I'm walking outside, and it's just amazing.
For this podcast, I've been buying up Clive Barker-related soundtracks, too. So now I have the Midnight Meat Train and Book of Blood and Candyman.
Oh, the Book of Blood soundtrack is really good.
I listened to it a little bit. It's kind of low and moody, I guess.
You know what I think about, for example, the Saint Sinner soundtrack? You guys ever seen the movie Saint Sinner?
Yes.
Yep.
Isn't it it's kind of a weird movie.
It is weird. Actually, I didn't like it, but the only thing I thought was kind of strange and interesting was that they use these little tubes to suck out people's blood, or there's... It's like... Yeah. I thought, it's like nobody's ever thought of that before. That was kind of interesting, but the whole rest of the movie I didn't really care for.
Yeah, especially if you had read the comic books.
Yeah, right. It has nothing to do with the comic books at all.
It has absolutely nothing to do with it at all. I'm like, wow, this was a complete disappointment. And it's one of those movies that it's too good a soundtrack for that movie.
I looked for the soundtrack. It's not on iTunes.
Oh.
Maybe, yeah.
At the time I got it, and it was like a limited edition of 3,000 copies or something.
Oh.
So I got that one at the time. I think it might have been released by the composer. I'm not sure. I need to pick it up and look at it again. But it's a really good soundtrack, but the movie is just really cheesy. And it's a contrast there.
So speaking of cheesy movies, our next topic is Hellraiser Revelations. So I don't know if I just gave away what we were going to say about it, but Roger, let's hear your take on this.
Oh.
I know you've been looking forward to this whole time. You couldn't wait to talk about this movie.
I'm on edge right here. No, right from the beginning, it's like, why am I watching this? 5 minutes in, I'm like, I can't turn it off. I haven't seen the whole thing yet, and I have to see it. It says Hellraiser.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, my finger on the power button. Should I or should I not? I didn't.
So it starts out with these two teenager characters in a car, and you off the bat you just hate their guts.
Yep.
And they're the main characters of the movie, kind of.
Oh boy! So that means there really isn't much that the viewer can identify with.
Well, it's an interesting because it's a terrible low budget movie with bad acting, and all of that you kind of see that and you go, okay, I know what I'm in for. But then they throw in stuff that they copy from the original Hellraiser, and that makes you mad.
Uh-huh.
At least that was kind of the reaction I had. It made me feel like punching stuff.
No, exactly.
You guys are worried about spoilers, or
no?
I would just go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, no, we're not. Yeah, so I would say, what was it? Okay, so those two awful teenagers, they want to run away because they're mad about their home situation. And they go to Tijuana, and they meet a guy who's got the box. Before that happens, one of them kills a prostitute in a bathroom stall. But yeah, so one of them opens the box. He gets taken away to hell, and then the other guy brings him back right away. because like the box is whispering to him to kill prostitutes. What? So he hires them and brings them back to the apartment on the mattress where he got taken away to hell or whatever, and kills a prostitute, and then like the guy springs out, kind of just appears out of the mattress looking kind of like how Julia did, I guess. And he's like, "Hey, I need more. You know, the blood brought me back. I need more."
Oh God.
And so he kills a bunch of prostitutes, and then one of them has a baby, and he says, "You know what? I don't want to do this. You do it."
Wow.
Yeah.
That is bad. That sounds really bad.
And there's like, stealing the skin and betrayal and it just.
I looked at a copy of the DVD. I don't own it.
Yeah.
I haven't rented it.
So I rented it on iTunes, and I rented the high definition version because I have iTunes connected to my TV, and it was $5, and that was way more money than that movie is worth.
And I looked at the menu of the DVD, and I saw a bonus, and it's like extra scenes, and I was like, why?
yeah. If you haven't,
want to watch more.
If you haven't taken enough punishment.
Yeah.
So and I've seen every Hellraiser sequel because I feel sort of like a duty to watch them. And this one was too much.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, they basically, this is pretty much common knowledge.
Yeah.
You guys know this too. They only did this because they wanted to hold on to the rights for the franchise so they could make the remake.
And apparently they'd wasted so much time debating the remake that they couldn't make it in time.
Right. So I think they shot this and produced it in like 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, and Doug Bradley doesn't really turn these movies down, but he turned this down.
Oh yeah, I had a friend of mine who was at I think it was it Spooky Empire or something.
Yeah,
and I think Doug Bradley was there with a T-shirt saying, "What would Pinhead do?" or something.
I bought that T-shirt. It says no remakes, please. It's a waste of good celluloid, and it's got a hook going through like one of those movie clapper things.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the T-shirt too, and my friend sent me a picture, and she got one. She got more than one.
Yeah.
Actually. And Doug Bradley was just pissed about the movie. He was like, that's just a horrible thing, and he said something like, Gary Tunnicliffe, who's the special effects artist that basically has been doing the makeup for Pinhead for the last 5 movies or something.
Mm-hmm.
He said something like, Gary Tunnicliffe, who wrote this movie and directed it. He said, you know what, Gary Tunnicliffe is a really good special makeup artist. And they said, oh, what did you think about the movie? And I think he said, he's a really good special effects artist.
Oh.
Like, he's not a good director. He's not a director and writer.
So you don't think in this case that we can blame the producers or say, like, oh, they corrupted his idea? It's just, there's not anything to work with to start with.
I don't know. I haven't seen the movie, but
it
was so rushed. I'm not even sure that they had any time to do any rewrites or anything.
Well, and I think that the reason that it has callbacks to Hellraiser in it is because it's partly stuff from the remake script.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
At least a script that Tunnicliffe wrote. That was for the remake, and then he got hired to rework it as this movie.
Oh, okay. I do remember seeing, when he tried to reimagine Pinhead with Project Angel.
Yeah, with that bloody-looking Pinhead.
Yeah. You know who that guy was? The guy who was under the makeup? He was actually the guy who has been playing Chatterer in the last few movies.
Oh, really?
Oh,
well, and and people hated that, but my thinking was if it's better than what they did because you're just trying to imitate Pinhead and doing a really bad job. I mean, if you're gonna not have Doug Bradley, maybe just try to do something completely different instead.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean...
That actor was really... And they had a different actor and a different guy doing Pinhead's voice. So, like, the voice and the body were two different people.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you opened a box, you summoned us, and we came.
Oh, boy. You know, it would have been just, much better if they had started showing the teenagers going to Tijuana and coming across this lament configuration pinata or something. just make it a comedy. I mean, probably that would have more entertainment value.
So there was like
have them show up at the From Dusk Till Dawn bar and
Yeah.
just walk in.
There was a bum that gave them the box, and and it wasn't all mysterious like it was in Hellraiser. It was like he spent a long time explaining to them about the box and what would happen when they open it, and he even comes back later, and they because the box finds its way back to their parents, and the parents are the ones that are in trouble at the end, at the last half of the movie.
Basically, it's just the old thing where they just give too much exposition.
Yes, way too much, and it's we don't care at that point at all.
And what, the last 30 minutes was everybody inside a couple rooms in the house.
Yeah, which was probably pretty cheap to film, I guess. Yeah, it was right up there with some of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I don't know, maybe it's because I like Hellraiser so much that it was offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've watched some really, really bad movies, but
oh yeah, I'm an MST3K fan, so
oh yeah,
I enjoy watching those movies that are so bad that they're good.
Yeah.
But then there's just movies that are so bad that there's no point watching them.
Yeah. Yeah, this would fall into that. I don't think you can laugh at this movie. I don't know. Did you have that feeling, Roger?
No, I had the same form of reaction you did. It just, they threw in the bloody mattress thing. They just threw that in there.
Yeah.
So they could say, oh, this is Hellraiser. But, yeah, there's no real redeeming qualities, no plot, just avoid at all costs.
Yeah. I gotta go get a glass of water, and I'll be right back.
I'm just imagining someone doing like a crossover between The Hangover and Hellraiser, and like getting the guy to like pop out of the mattress, and Zach Galifianakis shows up and goes like, "Hey, dude, oh wow, I got a hangover," or something like that. I mean, seriously.
Well, the guy had a big old smile on his face when he jumped out of the mattress.
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, it was goofy.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I think that movie stuck in my throat.
I was just telling Roger, about we should make a crossover between The Hangover and Hellraiser Revelation.
That's kind of what that movie was. That's funny.
Galifianakis pop up from the mattress and, dude, what happened last night?
I don't remember, but I've got a puzzle box.
Yeah. Hey, I got a puzzle box, and there's a tiger in the bathroom.
That reminds me, I just dropped my puzzle box on the floor. I have one of those plastic ones where you kind of slide the sides together, and I dropped it on the floor, and it just blew apart.
Oh, shucks. Did it break something, or can you put it back together?
Nah, I think it's gone. It was just one of those $20 ones.
Yeah, okay. I was going to tell you to be careful when you're putting it back together. You might open some doors.
That's right. Yeah, and so when I was watching that movie, I was kind of wondering if they had that version of the puzzle box, that cheap one that I have. But I think they sprung for the actual replica one.
Yeah, I'm sure that Tony Cliff and the 2 Hours in the Dark company, they probably have some boxes from the previous sequels.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think so. And I think they brought in. Did they bring in Cenobites from the other sequels? There was a Chatterer there, but it was like a female one, right?
Well, I haven't seen it. Roger?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even...
The only
Probably
thing...
different actors, you know.
Yeah.
But,
From the trailer, I think I remember seeing someone holding a woman, like, on a, doing like a neck lock thing or something.
Yeah.
And it looked like a mix between a Chatterer and one of those sister Cenobites from Inferno.
Yeah. I think it was a Chatterer woman.
Uh-huh.
So the only thing I liked in this movie at all was... When the Cenobites first showed up and there was a pillar that was turning and it had a skull on it, I thought that looked kind of neat. And that's it. That's like everything that every redeeming quality in that movie is right there for me.
Yeah, well, sadly, that's what I think that most of the last few sequels have done.
Yeah.
There's pretty much just when the Cenobites show up, it's like a really cool scene, and then they open their mouths and start talking.
Yeah. Oh, and there was there was another thing that they did with this movie. It's like it's kind of not what Hellraiser is about, but it's like that when somebody opens the box and the chains appear and the room is all dark and kind of misty and blue and stuff. So in this movie, they decided that room is like a little dimension, and those Cenobites are always hanging out in that room. So if somebody's thinking about opening the box or talking about opening the box, they would cut to that room, and Pinhead would be like, "Huh? What's going on? Oh, they're gonna, they're gonna open the box."
Like rubbing a can.
Yeah, like a genie's lamp, maybe.
Oh my gosh.
But the sad thing is, the new people that have never seen a Hellraiser movie are going to go see this and they're going to, oh, that's crap.
I would hope not. And that's kind of like starting with, like, Nightmare on Elm Street 6 or whatever.
Yeah. Which, hey, who knows? Maybe the only positive thing that will come out of this is that, like you said, like people who started watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6 and they started watching it, the others going back, they come to the first one and they're like blown away and they're like, whoa,
yeah.
This is really cool. So maybe these people will get to see the first one, the second one. That's probably the only thing that I think of that, there's a Hellraiser podcast and they were talking about, they went through and they did an episode on each Hellraiser movie all the way through Revelations, and at the end they talked about how it would be cool to do a Hellraiser marathon, but do it in reverse order, so that the movies get better each time. Yeah, you can get so depressed at the end.
Yeah.
Definitely you will not feel so depressed at the end. You'll be like, hey, this is getting better.
Yeah.
Because as it is, I mean, you guys know that I'm a hardcore collector.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, like, for example, I don't own a copy of Hellraiser 5, or I don't own a copy of Hellworld.
Yeah.
And,
you can actually, you can get 2 collections now that have 4 movies on one disc.
Yeah, my girlfriend, my fiance, gave it to me this Christmas, actually. It's like Hellraiser 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And there's another one that's like, there's another one that's like 5, 6, or 5, 6, 7, and or 5, 6, and 8, and something. I don't know. They skip one. They skip Deader, I think.
Oh, really? Or did they skip Inferno? Because I think Inferno is one of those that's not like the others.
Yeah, right. I can't remember. I ordered them. They're on, one of them is the Blu-ray one. Is different from the DVD one. The Blu-ray one doesn't have Hellraiser 3 in it.
You know what just blew my mind is that I just thought that Hellraiser Revelations might have a Blu-ray edition, but not Nightbreed.
I think you're probably right.
It's like I just thought of this, and I'm like, oh my god. I hope they don't release Hellraiser Revelations in Blu-ray.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's its only home is on disc, right? I mean you can't or download. You can. It's not like you can go see it in a theater.
Right. No. I mean, honestly, it cost how much was it? Like between $150,000 and $200,000.
Yeah.
So I think they might just have released it on a few dollar theaters just to make sure that the movie was on a theater.
I would have been happier just watching my TV that was turned off.
You guys remember, talking about dollar theaters, do you guys remember when Midnight Meat Train got shafted and released dollar theater?
From Lionsgate.
Yeah, that's just awful. I mean, you don't do that. The movie was actually pretty decent. I mean, I have like 2 copies of it on DVD, and
I have the Blu-ray of it, and I never saw of course, I never got to see the theatrical version because I'm in a town that has one theater.
Well, you're luckier than me. I mean, my town doesn't have any theaters at all right now.
So,
yeah, they've just been closing because of, the other multiplex theaters. But
so, Roger, did you get a chance to see Midnight Meat Train?
I don't think it was anywhere around here. I don't.
Yeah.
But the Blu-ray is awesome, though. I think doesn't Clive do a commentary with the director?
He does. Yeah. Yeah, the Blu-ray is really good, and it's an extended version, so the few people that ever saw the theatrical version, that's going to just disappear in time, and we'll never really know. It's just less violent, I think, anyway.
Is it true that Sam Raimi's brother that's in the movie, the guy who gets his brains bashed with a hammer?
Yeah, and his eyeballs come out.
Yeah, I think, isn't there like a difference between some editions where in one edition like 2 eyeballs pop out and another?
Yeah, well, in the theatrical version, there weren't as many eyeballs coming out.
Oh,
that's what I read.
That's just so much better.
Yeah, and it's funny that there's people whose job it is to decide, this rated R, you can have 1 eyeball coming out, but if it's 2 eyeballs, then that's unrated or X or whatever.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's all it's all based on people's feelings.
Uh-huh.
And people that we don't know or respect.
Exactly. They'll say that, this will corrupt, the minds of young people.
It's like, well, then don't bring those young people to the theater.
Sure. Or if it's such a corrupting influence, then how are they immune to it?
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't critics, or not critics, but shouldn't the guys who censors? I don't know if I can call them censors, but yeah, basically that's what they do.
Yeah.
Then censors would end up being these deviants and crazy serial killers because they watch all that stuff all the time. So
yeah,
and I'm sure that they're regular people, but
there's a documentary that you can watch about those people and what they do, the MPAA.
Uh-huh.
It's really interesting. It's like they pick a bunch of parents and stuff, and they go into this secret room and watch movies and take notes on them and decide, what rating it's going to get.
Oh, are they professionally trained for that, or are they...
No, not at all.
Oh, wow! I'm surprised. So they're basically just normal people that they ask for their opinion. And...
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
So what's next on the
IDW Clive Barker omnibus that has Thief of Always and Seduth and the Great and Secret Show IDW comic books all kind of put together into this one book.
Oh yeah.
So do you have that?
No, actually, I was going to say that I had it in my hand. Last week, I was in Cupertino. I walked into this comic book store, and I saw that. I held it in my hand. I was leafing through it. But I already have The Thief of Always, The Great and Secret Show, and Seduth in the original, issues. So yeah. I didn't see the point of buying that, so I just put it back.
I didn't have the Thief of... I didn't have The Thief of Always. So I bought it, and I'm kind of thinking now that, to save space on my shelf, I may give away my Great and Secret Show comics, just because, I don't know. But the thing about this omnibus that kind of bugged me a little bit is that the print, it's smaller than a normal comic book. It looks to me. So the print is kind of hard to read on at least the Thief of Always one that I've read so far.
No. So they made, the pages smaller?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it's smaller than a regular comic book size.
I think I noticed that, too, when I was looking through it. Because, I guess because it's a hardcover and it's slightly smaller than the comic size. Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
IDW editions were pretty big pages, so I guess they really did have to shrink them. Yeah,
and of course their art is always really good, and they're good comic books. And I never bought that Thief of Always before because I always, in my mind, I always wanted to imagine the drawings from Clive Barker's book and not these other ones. But now I wanted to give it a chance and read it, and it was really good.
It's really good. The artwork is very good, and the Great and Secret Show is just an amazing adaptation. I mean,
it would be nice if they. I thought they were going to go back and do Everville.
Yeah, I don't know. That depends on how well it sold. I'm guessing it sold well because now they're releasing the omnibus.
Yeah.
But at one point, I think that. Let me check that. I know that at one point the adaptation for Great and Secret Show was supposed to be just 6 issues, and then they expanded it. Mm. You remember that?
Right, to go through the whole book.
Yeah, because they said, well, I remember Clive Barker saying in an interview something like, I was just talking to the editor of IDW, and he agreed to expand it to, more issues. Oh, it was Chris Ryle.
Oh, okay. So yeah, they're really good. I mean, when I bought this, and Seduth is kind of hard to understand, but it was good. I mean, and it's not that old. It just came out a little while ago.
Seduth was an interesting experience, wasn't it? I mean, have you guys tried reading Seduth with the 3D glasses?
Yes. Yeah, and that's why I haven't bothered to read it in the omnibus, because it's like I have the comic with the 3D glasses, so.
Right, yeah. It worked pretty well for me. I mean, I was reading it. My only complaint about Seduth was it was too short. I read that thing in under 10 minutes. I had read the comic book, and I was like, well, that was appetizing. Now I would like the full course, please.
Yeah, well, and the Hellraiser comics are like that, too. They're really short.
They have a lot of big splashes and double pages, and
yeah, and then it's like, I gotta wait a month for the next one.
That's the only thing that I criticize a little bit.
Yeah,
but I mean, gosh, I'm just looking at this cover with Pinhead putting his hand over his face, and it's just.
And his hand looks like it's nailed to his face, right?
Yeah, the nails are the nails are in the same position they would be in his face, except they're in his hand.
Yeah.
That is some amazing work.
Yeah, really interesting.
It's Tim Bradstreet.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So that's the end of our main topic. Okay, so that's our contest. And you, what is the name of Cal's father? Or what is he called? And you can put that in the form of Twitter. Twitter is BarkerCast, or @BarkerCast. Or you can do it on the Revelations Facebook page if you like us there, or on the Revelations forum. Or you can email me if you want to, also at ryandanhauser@gmail.com. And all of that is on the website, so you can find those there too. But answer that question before next time, and then we'll declare the answer in our next podcast. And that brings us to what next time is going to be. So we're going to talk about the books of blood and their adaptations. So that includes comic books and that includes movies. And we'll just kind of go through each story and talk about them. So it's going to cover probably more than one episode. Probably more than a few.
Sounds good.
Okay, so if you have any questions or feedback, you can leave me a Skype voicemail. It's ryan.danhauser, or you can send them in Twitter or Facebook, like we mentioned before, or email. And I think that's it.
Or you can also visit Fifth Dominion. And
and on the forum as well, yep.
Yeah, post your comments on Fifth Dominion.
And that was...
for the podcast thread.
Timewins.com/Clive.
I only know what it does. It hurts.
Hi, this is Ryan from the future. Boy, if you made it through our first episode, congratulations. Anyway, in the original airing of this episode, we had Hellraiser by Motorhead right here. And in order to respect the rights holders, we've removed it from the episode. I recommend you find Hellraiser by Motorhead. I believe it's on the March or Die album. And give it a listen. Thanks for understanding. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. Although technically I think this was the beginning. Okay, bye.